Well, this was a real pile of shit. Let's rank this film on the Cageometer.
Okay, let's get to the ratings. Well, we said we're not gonna do the trackers on this thing because this is not a real movie. I'm not even gonna add anything in the background of our breakdown thing for this movie specifically because it's not even a real fucking movie. You can't even call this a movie after that ending. Like it's not even. Anyways, with that, let's get to the ratings. Vince. Where does Dark, the Dying of the Light, Paul Schrader recut rate on your Cageometer?
Oh, God, fuck. Okay, because of how awful the ending is, I'm going to remove that part from my decision making because like you just said, I felt like up until that ending, it's a much better film, paced way better character development. He cut out all the garbage that didn't need to be in there. So I would say that I'll give this one a 5. If I included the ending, it would be a 2 because I feel like he wasted everything by that ending. But I want to be fair because I feel like up until then he did a much better job. I just wish he would have. I wish he would have done things the way that we kind of already hashed out. So I'll go back into it. Cage, I'll give Cage a 5 as well because this edit made his decisions and his choices on the performance actually make sense. We got rid of all the horrible over the top shit by Schrader cutting it as quiet clips instead of it being in your face, like that scene in particular, that scene where he freaks out in his office when they're kicking him out of the building. So glad they did that.
You can almost kind of infer that maybe some of that was in his head. When he's telling fuck you in the office and stuff.
Yeah.
And like him freaking out in his office. You could kind of play that off as like this is just what is going on in his mind while he's being confronted about this stuff.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
All that stuff was cut a lot better and it made his decisions make sense and played a lot better in this cut. So I think if this is how it had originally been done, I would have given him a 5 on Dying of the Light, but because of the way they cut it, it just was goofy and over the top and unnecessary. So, 5 for the movie, minus the ending, 5 for Cage. He didn't knock it out of the park, but his decision making and the way that it was cut lended a little more like emotional impact on me this time around than it did the first time.
Yeah. Nigel, where does Dark rate on your Cageometer?
Well, I'll reverse it. I'll start with my Cage rating, which I'm not going to change. It's still going to be a 5 out of 10 because I felt like his performance is the same either way, right? Like it was him. The movie may have contextualized it differently, but I still felt like his performance was good enough in portraying a guy with dementia and stuff to just rate about the same. I don't think it changed anymore. Like they didn't have Paul Schrader reshoot scenes with him to make a different performance. So I'm just going to leave that as what it is. It's 5 out of 10. Middle of the road, pretty good. Not terrible. The movie itself, like you guys said, I was enjoying it more than the Dying of the Light cut. Setting aside the weird CRT vision stuff and some of the editing, like I know that he didn't have access to a full suite of editing stuff, so I tried to imagine like, okay, if this was cleaned up and looked better, like looked studio quality, then this would probably be a better cut than what it had. But
and if it was scored specifically for this film, if the sound design would have been done specifically for this cut,
So I think everything leading up to the third act was a much better movie. But because of that third act, I'm not going to divorce that from it while giving this its final rating. And I'm also, it's the worst ending I've ever seen. If the movie had been worse than Dying of the Light, and again, it's kind of hard because we're comparing it to Dying in the Light, which if you're trying to watch this by itself without knowing the context of Dying in the Light, I think I would have given it a worse score because the ending makes no sense unless you have it. At least it makes some certain amount of sense to me because we have the context of what was happening in the original story.
Right.
But without that, it would have been completely incomprehensible. Like their conversation with each other wouldn't have been understandable and stuff. But enough beating around the bush. I'll give it a 2 out of 10 as well. I would give it a 1 out of 10 if the movie had been worse than Dying of the Light up until that point. If I thought it had been worse, it would have been the lowest score that I could give a movie on this show. But because I enjoyed everything leading up to the finale, I'm giving it a higher score. But because the finale was so terrible, I have to drop it down to like 2 out of 10 overall. Just watch Dying of the Light. Like, if you're gonna watch either of these two, watch Dying of the Light. I think you'll get more of what I think the intent was behind the story than if you just watch this and are just left with nothing at the end.
Essentially, yeah. But I guess that's what Evan was left with, was nothing.
Yeah, maybe that's the true intent. I just feel like there's a stronger message in the original cut of like, the United States foreign policy versus fundamentalism and how they interact with each other and how it's ultimately pointless for both sides. Like that, do you think it made any difference? What you did, like that could be applied to both of them. Like, Benir killed a bunch of people and ended up as a sick, lonely man dying in an apartment and didn't further his cause or anything. And Evan, trying to take revenge on him, basically wasted his life and ended up dying, a broken old man. So it made no difference either way. So
there was that kind of poignant thing where Benir like turns it back on him. Is like, did you think that it made any difference?
Yes.
Because
like we're going around in circles here, accusing each other of this shit when it applies to both of us. You don't even have that. You have that line, I think, but it doesn't have the same amount of meaning because it's all jumbled mess of colors and crap, and you don't know what the fuck's happening, and you can't follow what they're talking or what they're even saying to each other. And honestly, without subtitles, I wouldn't have known what they were saying to each other half the time if I didn't already know, because we watched Dying of the Light, so I knew what their lines were. But it was because of the distortion and the way things were cut, it was just complete nonsense. So, I don't want to say Paul Schrader ruined his own movie, because maybe this is what he really wanted out of it, but I feel like this ruined a serviceable movie.
Yeah. Okay. So on my Cageometer, I'm also not going to divorce that ending. That ending fucking ruined the movie. It was going really great. Like, I was actually pretty impressed with the cut up to that point. And, the whole time up to this point, I was like, God, I'm going to have to probably give this at least a 5. It's a pretty solid put together, despite Paul Schrader's, lack of access to footage and the bad sound and the needle drop of other soundtracks from other movies and stuff. It was pretty well done. And I thought there was a lot more emotional weight. There was a lot more character development. There was a lot more kind of like, I had more empathy towards Evan and Benir. I had more empathy towards both of them. Like, I can see both sides here of like, you're kind of looking at Evan as he's a hero and he's highly decorated, but he basically, killed people too. And that was like, that's where you kind of compare these two guys of like, okay, which one is really the bad guy in this? And them cutting out the stuff where like he tried to kill one of his henchmen for not knowing where a seam was or whatever that was about in the original cut. Yeah. And then the ending that was tacked on to this version in the Dying of the Light version. Kind of made, obviously Benir is actually, the worst of the two, and Evan was justified for going back and killing him. But the fucking ending just ruined everything. It just makes no sense, and I don't even know what the fuck I'm supposed to get from that. Like we said, it's just nonsense, and it's just garbage. It doesn't like we all said, like if you would have just watched this and not watched the other version, you would know what the fuck was going on in that last scene. So ultimately I'm going to give it a 3, which is what I gave Dying of the Light, because I have to balance out the movie was much better. So I have a 5 until the last 5 minutes of the movie. And then the ending was so fucking bad that it turned it back into a 3. So did he improve on this thing? Did what you make any difference, Paul Schrader? I will say, jumping over to Cage, it did make a difference in my perception of Cage's performance. I gave him a 4 out of 10 for this version because of the way that it was cut. I just feel like he comes off as a much more sympathetic character, aside from the over-the-top racism things, which didn't feel necessary to put back into the film. Just Paul Schrader being Paul Schrader, I guess. But I do feel like he gave a better performance, which that's very telling of like the edit can really change the feel of a film and the way that a performance is perceived by the audience. I mean, you got to kind of wonder if maybe some of these Cage performances that everybody's lambasting and thinking are absolutely terrible, especially the ones that have been done by more amateur directors, does the onus fall on Nic Cage, or does it fall on the editor, the director? Who's responsible for this terrible performance? Because in this one, I felt him slipping, and I saw him as a guy who kind of was this highly decorated, highly respected person in the CIA who was losing everything, and I felt for him through this. In the other one, I couldn't give two shits about his character. From the moment he jumped on screen the first time to the moment he died, I couldn't give a fuck about him. In this one, I actually genuinely cared. Anyway, so I do feel like this edit resurrected Cage's performance a little bit in my mind. I know Nigel, you felt like you saw that performance in the other version. Yeah. Which I get. I did see this performance in that movie too, but I also felt like there were too many cagey, over-the-top things that were fixed by the weird dementia episodes. So the weird Oliver Stone style filming actually made me like his performance better in a weird way. So yeah, not a very high rating for this film overall. From us, and I'm guessing from the audience in general.
Yeah,
not
whoever's watched this movie.
Yeah, I wonder how many people have actually seen this cut.
We just spent 3 hours talking about a cut that was only released to BitTorrent, was 74 minutes long, and just fucking ended out of nowhere in the middle of a scene.
Maybe we can all sympathize with Evan then. Talk about a fool's errand. It's ultimately pointless.
Ultimately, yeah.
Yeah.